Candid Frank Stanisci of Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Lacrosse Talk, joining me is Gary Groob. Gary, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Frank. It's a beautiful day out, and we got a great show ahead of you. And one of my favorites from the past, and hopefully from going to the future too.
Yeah, I hear you. And his name is Darius Kilgore, former GM, former first-round pick, retired jersey for the Buffalo Bandits. Darius, welcome to the program. Thanks for taking time to join us.
Thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure.
Well, we'll discuss whether it was a pleasure or not after we do the interview. Let's not assume anything here, Darius. This is like being on the floor, man. This is like being on. You never know; an elbow might come flying. You know.
I'm ready.
I bet you are. Seriously. Well, let's start at the beginning. We always like to talk to former players, coaches, anybody involved in lacrosse, how they got the bug. When did the bite happen?
I started when I was 3 years old. My brother signed up in Niagara Lake, Ontario, and I got to watch him for a year, and I decided I wanted to give it a try. And, growing up on a reservation, obviously it's something that, we all want to do and be part of. But on our reservation, we didn't have a lacrosse box at the time, so we had to travel off the res to play. And Niagara Lake was probably the closest spot, so that's where we ended up at.
Yeah, it's not. We all know that it has an Indigenous background. Is it? I'm asking, as someone who's not part of your community, how deep is it still? We know the roots of lacrosse are in the Indigenous community. How strong are those right now?
I think they're getting stronger and stronger every year. You didn't see, we always played lacrosse, but you didn't really see the guys going off the reservation to play other than box cross. But, with the success of, Zeddy Williams and the Thompson brothers and other guys, everybody's seeing now that you can leave the res and have success, and you can come back anytime you want. The res will always be there. But it's really good to see that, Chase Scanlon in college, Dahoga, I know it didn't work out for them guys this year, but, it's really good to see that guys are leaving the res and taking the opportunities that are available to them.
Is there, in your mind, in your interpretation, in your experience, a bit of an isolation because you're in the reservation and lacrosse affords you an opportunity to sort of have a look at the outside world?
Yeah, I really think it expands your world tremendously. On the reservation, you sort of live with your family, and it's sort of a closed community. So you really don't get a lot of views other than what you get, from other Indians. And when you leave, obviously, there's different opinions and different views, and it really just broadens your interpretation of what life really is.
You get to enhance your life. Today, we live in a world that's beginning to appreciate and understand that, the trials and tribulations that, Native people have been through. You've had a tough life too, and a lot of it is basically we understand the challenges that people on the reservation have, and how Aboriginal people aren't given the same kind of opportunity to feel confident and feel the same kind of opportunity people have outside. How are you feeling about that, looking back at your life today, and give us just a quick insight? I'd like to get into it deeper about how your life has changed and what you've learned, and how grateful you are, for the life that you've lived and what you've lived through so far to make you the better person that you probably are right now.
Well, I mean, when growing up, I was, it was a little bit different for me because my father was non-native. My mother was 100% native, and he definitely had a different view than the natives did on what life is about. My mother was traditional, and I got my views from her on the native community and stuff like that. My father never really became part of the native community. He was part of being out here, but he didn't really believe in the stuff that she believed in, and she didn't believe in what he believed in. So I got a chance to see two very different views. So I was a little bit more exposed than most guys that leave the reservation. And because I had to leave the reservation at a young age, I sort of learned how to mesh and mingle with non-native people. I never played for a hometown team. I was always traveling, and that really taught me humility and how to fit into a team. You see a lot of guys come into a team, and it's like, well, what are you going to do for me? Well, when you're the outsider, you got to come in thinking, what can I do for you, so you guys accept me. And I think that really helped me in terms of how I viewed the game. Be part of the game, don't be the game. Just be a good teammate. And if everybody's a good teammate, then you have a good team. Those are the kind of views that I lived with, and I still live with today. Going through Buffalo was a very eye-opening experience for me. And coming out of that, obviously I was not very happy, and I was living a hateful life. But now, you got to look back on it and just learn the lessons that were taught to you, because that's what life really is. It's teaching you lessons. And you're going to get taught the same lesson over and over until you learn that lesson. And I think I've learned a lot of lessons over my years, and I think I'm in a really good spot right now, and hopefully that'll translate into success outside of the reservation.
Do you feel like sharing what you've done? We've talked to some native lacrosse players who have felt the need to how can I put this, be an example, help to translate, what it's like to be a native, and then, the transition and some of the, the travails, the tough things about, entering in outs or leaving the reservation, that type of thing. Have you given any thought to that, working with either young people, or have you had a chance to tutor or advise people? I know you were a coach in lacrosse, so you had a chance to do it that way.
Yeah, I started coaching very young. When I was 20 years old, I started coaching a local high school team, and I really fell in love with the light bulb effect. I call it. It's when you're helping a younger player, and you can almost see the light bulb go off in their head that, oh, I get that now. And I love that with young kids, because one thing they learn with young kids is if you give them bad advice, they become a stone. You can't give them any more advice if they don't trust you. If you give them really good advice, they become a sponge, and they want more and more and more. So you have to really measure your words to what you say to children, and how you're going to get it out of them. I still believe that kids need to be pushed, but I will not push a kid more than what I think he is capable of. So if I'm pushing you, it's because I see something inside of you that maybe you don't see yet. So I think that's also part of being a coach is telling the truth. The parents, they'll always say good job, they'll always say good game. A coach, and they have to tell you, you didn't do this, we didn't do this. And that's how you grow and expand your game, is by adding little pieces all the time. So that's what I enjoy the most, is helping someone get to where they want to get to. That's the best part of being a coach for me.
And tough love, it sounds like.
Well, you can't have love without truth. So,
Yeah.
You got to tell the truth, and then it's up to them. And I truly believe that the kids are stronger than we give them credit for. You look back at your life, and I remember this guy saying to me one time, I was mad because I played a game and my dad was still yelling at me. I thought I played a good game. My dad was mad at me, and I'm complaining. I'm like 21 years old at this time. My dad's still trying to tell me what to do. And this guy, he was like, you know what, man? Are you unhappy with who you are? And I'm like, no, I'm pretty happy with who I am. And he said, then your dad did a good job. Why don't you shut up and appreciate everything? And it was an eye-opening experience for me.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Very good advice.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go back to the beginning, really. And you had the bug when you were 3. You started playing. When did you know that this was where you wanted to be? This was the career. This was the path. This is life.
Probably about 5 years old. I mean, I took to it and I loved it. I loved the physicality of the game. I love that the old saying used to be the boys of summer played lacrosse or played baseball, and the men of summer played lacrosse. I loved watching the junior Bs in Niagara Lake and junior A's whenever we get out to St. Catharines. I really loved it, and I was very successful at it. And obviously, the more successful you are at something, the more you're drawn to it. So that has a lot to do with it. But at a very young age, I competed against Rich, who might have been the best player a year above me, and I got the pleasure of playing against him every single day. So if he's the best above me and I can compete with him, then it just sort of figures out that I'm going to be a good player at my age. But
Right.
the backyard games we played every day were very, very competitive. And yes, we did fight a lot and we wrestled a lot. And I think that made us better.
Hmm. Now, when you got into junior, you were at the St. Catharines, right?
I started in Niagara Lake when I was 16. I played 2 years of junior B there and then went over to St. Catharines.
Hmm. And had just a small career, with 350 points in 60 games, just a drop in the bucket.
Well,
uh,
I was very, very lucky with the teammates I had. I grew up playing against like Trevor Bidal, Darren Mutch, Randy Mearns, Mike Lyons. We were all on different teams, and we were probably the best competition in Zone 9. So when we
right.
got the chance to finally play together, it was just so special. I still think, for me, that was the funnest, best team I ever played on was the '90 team. It
Mhm.
might not have been the most talented or the toughest or anything like that, but we were a team. After practice, everybody went and hung out together, and then we all knew each other for a very long time. So
Mhm.
for me, that was the absolute most special time of my career playing in St. Catharines.
Now, when Buffalo became a team in the major indoor lacrosse league, I guess timing's everything, really, because you became their very first draft pick. Um, Talk about just around that era, just before it. You knew you were going in there, and what was the feeling of getting into professional lacrosse now?
I was actually a friend of mine, Emmett Purnup, was playing for the Washington Wave at the time, and he had convinced me, like, because Buffalo didn't have a team until that year. So I was planning on going down and playing for the Washington Wave, and then Buffalo got a team, and they drafted me. And there was St. Catharines guys involved in that. Buff McCready, who I'd played for in St. Catharines, and John Meridian, St. Catharines guy, Les Bartley, St. Catharines guy. So I was just very lucky that they got to see me play. When I was at the top of my game, really, and to get the opportunity to play in front of the hometown team. Finally, that was my hometown, Buffalo. That's the closest I got. So that was unbelievable to get that opportunity to play there, and then to go in there with Jim Veltman, Troy Cordonley, John Tavares, Bob Hamley, Derek Keenan, Kevin Alexander, Bill Gary. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's just it was an amazing experience and something I'll never forget.
Oh, did we lose Gary?
Yeah, we
Um,
did.
yeah, no worries. I'll pick up. Hopefully, he'll be back soon. He's had some trouble with his internet. I guess it's rearing its ugly head again. Gary was talking to you about being the first round draft pick of the Buffalo Bandits. You've explained to us all the great players that you've played with. Tell us a little bit about how the transition was from playing with these guys. I should say playing against them and then playing with them as teammates. What was that like?
I think the best explanation of that is when I came out of juniors, I got drafted by Brampton, and us and Brampton did not like each other. We had multiple bench clears. We had fights before the game. We had fights after the game. We did not like each other. So my first practice going up to Brampton, I really thought I was going to have to fight somebody. So the whole practice, I was like on my toes, like, oh, who's coming after me? Who's coming after me? But I also learned, like, holy cow, these guys are super talented, super smart. They just brought back John Tavares and Troy Quarterly and Jim Veltman. So that was my first taste of going somewhere where I think they really looked at me like they didn't like me. So that was another example of where I had to convince them that, yes, I'm part of your team and I will do what it takes to be part of this team. So it was a weird feeling at first, but at the same time, I would never change it because that was probably the most talented, toughest team I played on was the first year in Brampton, and I love all them guys, and I love the memories that we made together.
It's important that you do that, that you make these memories. And you were talking about playing with these players and having so much pride in playing with them. What was it like when you first got on the floor and realized where you were playing? What's the first thing that that crawled into your head that, wow, I'm actually here?
The biggest adjustment I had to make was allowing someone to help me. When I was coming out of juniors, my last year of juniors, we won the Minto Cup, but we had 11 rookies on there. And it was, basically I was the initiator of the offense, and I felt like I had to do a whole lot. And I sort of created the habit of hanging on to the ball and this and that. When I got there, my biggest adjustment was like, geez, man, like I got Troy Quarterly with me. Maybe set some picks for him and, get the easy goal once in a while, and that was the biggest thing, was to be part of it and not make it about you. So when I went to Brampton, that was a great eye-opening experience with playing with other great players.
I asked him, Gary, the first time he stepped on the floor and started playing with these great players, what his reaction was. You can take it from there.
Okay. Now, with the Mill and thinking about today's game, the Mill is kind of like the Wild West. Now, I know you've watched some of the old games again. What's your take on it? Has it gone soft now, or?
It's definitely lightened up. Back in the day, a lot of the players didn't know each other. Like, it was St. Catharines against Six Nations. Now everybody knows each other, and you sort of lose an edge. Like, you don't want to hurt a buddy or something like that. I know, like, the first time I had that experience was I played against Randy Mearns, and I probably could have ran him into the boards, but I lightened up and said, "Oh, it's Randy Mearns. I don't want to do something dirty or anything like that." But overall, mostly back then, it was, I want to run this guy through the boards because I know he's going to do it to me. And I look back at some of those games and I'm like, man, how did we not break bones, and how did we not end up in the bench clear every single game? Because there were some vicious slashes going on and just overall dirtiness that was like, wow, that was way out of line. Like, today, he'd have got a 5-game suspension. Back then, it was, all right, you get 2 minutes, so.
Or a dirty look from the ref.
Yeah. I remember a referee, Don Brock. Two guys were going to fight, and they were circling each other, and they took too long. And Donnie Brock actually stopped the fight and said, "You both get 2 minutes for delay game." I think he actually called them, told them they were soft on the way to the box. Like, quit wasting our time. I mean, that's the way it was back then, but like now, and the only thing I don't like about our game right now is it's going towards money. People are trying to make money, and they're making it about and you have to make a living, and I get all that stuff, but lacrosse has got to come first. If lacrosse doesn't come first, you're going to have a hard time winning against a team that puts lacrosse first. And that's what I always try to tell my players is, this don't last forever, man. Someday you're going to be on the outside looking in, and you'll never, ever get what you have here outside of it. So make the most of it right now and really, truly appreciate it, because the only thing special in anybody's life is what they think is special. So if we make this special, then it's special. If we don't make it special, then it's not, and we're not going to be very good.
Right.
Gary, he's talking about the violence in the game. Should think we should ask him about the difference in the sticks? Like back then they were using wooden sticks. now they're using plastic that bends pretty good.
When we've seen a team roll up with 7, 8, 9 wood sticks, it's like, oh my God, I know what night it's going to be tonight. And then there's a team with plastic sticks. I don't care how hard you slash me, it ain't going to hurt after the wood sticks, man. I remember Miles General slashed me on the elbow one time, and I lost feeling in my hand for a good 5 minutes, man. I couldn't even, it felt like my hand was dead. But, that's the way the game was played. And if I didn't like it, then there was something I could do about it, or I could just learn to accept it, man. That was my choice. And
Right.
I think that's, a big part of the game back in the day was becoming a man. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your teammates. Don't get pushed around. Don't let them touch the goalie. There's a lot of unwritten rules back in the day that I think have sort of taken, gotten pushed to the side, But I'm the guy that they asked before. How if you wanted to build a new team, what would you do? I said have $10 tickets, $2 beers, and 3 fights a game. You'd sell any place out in the world.
Amen.
They
Amen.
didn't
Exactly.
appreciate that. But, that's the truth.
Yeah, definitely. We had Bill Fox on last week, and your name came up, of course.
What a
Foxy's
surprise. What a surprise.
But he meant the one thing he had mentioned over above anything was that you demanded respect on the floor every time, anytime, and you could back up anything that you had said. So that's a testament to your character on the floor as well.
Well, Bill, I used to ride the refs pretty hard as a player and as a coach, but I think it sort of came with an understanding. Like Bill, he'd known me for a long time, all through juniors and all that. Gary Martin, and I developed a relationship with them guys. Don Brock, all them guys, and I think Gary Martin gave me the best eye-opening thing that I ever got from a referee. And I was giving him crap about a call he made and all this and that, and he's trying to explain to me what he was thinking. I wasn't hearing it. And I finally get done, run out of breath, and he finally gets to say something. He goes, Darius, if you want respect, you got to give respect. And I was like, wow, I just treated you like an asshole, and I want you to treat me fair. It doesn't work that way, right? If you want to have a rapport with these guys, then you gotta respect the job that they're doing. You don't have to agree with it, but you got to respect them. And that changed my view on referees a lot.
We got a question actually from your hockey partner, Aaron William Freeland, and he's asking, what was it like to coach Richie, and who would win in a foot race?
Obviously Richie, because I was retired at that time. But even in our heyday, Rich is a step faster. I can't take that away from him. And what was the first half of that? What was it like coaching him?
Who would win in a foot race? But what was it like coaching Richie?
Very easy, very easy. He made it very easy, and I learned after he left, and then Chris White went to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of leaderless in the dressing room, and that changed a lot of things. Like Rich and Whitey always had my back in terms of our planning, our game plans, everything like that. And then it sort of changed to where guys were questioning a lot of stuff we were doing. So you really need to have that guy in the locker room that guys follow and trust. As long as he trusts the coach, then they trust the coach. So Rich made it very easy on me. But it was strange going into the first time that me and him had a disagreement, and I had to tell him, like, hey man, well, I got last say, so sorry, brother, but we're going with my plan.
There's a pecking order.
And it changed.
Yeah.
He was on top for 48 years, or for 38 years. And then I finally got my turn.
What's that like?
Sorry.
That like? Sorry, no, I'm sorry, Gary. What's that like getting your turn? When do you know you got your turn, and what does it feel like?
Oh man, when they start listening to what you say, people respect what you have to say. So for me, it was when people started asking me opinions about, like, hey, what do you think I should do on offense? What do you think of this player? And guys were really interested in what I was thinking. And that was when I knew, like, okay, I must be onto something here. And it took a long time, even when I coached down in Washington, it was really Paul and Gary's team.
Mm-hmm.
I was just sort of agreeing with what they said and sort of giving them bits of advice that I could. But I knew it was Gary and Paulie's team. When I came to Buffalo, it was my team. Mm-hmm. And I changed everything that I was doing as a coach. I brought in a whole type of defense that, even my assistant coaches were like, I don't know. But they trusted me. They bought in, and it worked out very well.
Well, it came down to character, right? You were the character player. You became the character coach. And I think really what you were drafting was character players, because it was never so much about, how great it was. It was character to fit into that mold, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. One thing with Buffalo is, we were good, and we always finished pretty good for the first 10 years I was there. I don't think we ever would have had a top 8 pick. So in that league, the top 3 or 4 picks are the offensive guys. After that,
Mhm.
transition defensive guys. So we were always continuing to pick transition D players. So we were a defensive based team, and offense just score the timely goals, don't make mistakes, and then we have John Tavares to finish off the game.
Right.
So it was a really good recipe at that time, and I got to thank all the guys that bought into that defense, because it was something different, and guys didn't really like it at first, but when they bought in and they seen the success we could have, we were blowing teams out 20 something to 10. I think we had 2 games that we held teams under 5 goals just because they hadn't seen it and they weren't prepared for it, and our guys executed. So any idea the coach has is only as good as the players that execute it.
I never heard having Mark Steenhouse on transition either. I believe one of the games you're talking about, that was a 17-point game against Toronto. You guys win, I think it was 25-10 or something. It was just a crazy game, but the entire team, everybody came together. Those years, I think it was 2008, 2009, were some of the best teams I think Buffalo ever had.
Yeah, and if you really look at it, I mean, it's not like we were loaded in terms of, oh man, that guy's a Hall of Famer, that guy's a Hall of Famer. We had a bunch of guys that could be Hall of Famers, might not be Hall of Famers, but
Mhm.
we believed in each other, and I truly believe this, and I think even other teams would say this, that we were the closest team in the league. We had the most fun. We hung out with each other. I mean, it was a really fun time to be a Buffalo Bandit at that time, and that always brings me back to a team is more important than an individual.
Mhm.
So you got to think of the team first before you think of the individual, and that sort of seems to be changing in now in the climate of today's game and stuff like that. But I'll always be a true believer of team first.
Now I'll bring it back a little bit on a native angle. A lot of the players on the Bandits were native, were from the res. You're more comfortable with them, just the whole style of play, or
I think I relate to them more.
Mhm.
I've lived on a reservation my whole life. Except 1 year I went to Nazareth College, but I've always been part of the reservation. I've always sort of lived with Native Americans and the ideology of being a Native American.
Mhm.
So I sort of related to them, but I also understand, like, if a non-native from Orangeville and it comes down to a kid from a native kid from somewhere he don't know, and an Orangeville kid, he's going to go with the Orangeville kid because he knows him, and he knows the area he's been raised up in, and he knows what he's all about. Well,
Mhm.
that's how I felt with the native guys. I know what they're all about. They know what I'm about, and we had trust. I think the year 2008, when we won the championship, we had 14 players, 3 coaches. Our video guy was native. Like, we hired a lot of natives back then, and we had a lot of success doing it.
Mhm. So continuing on with that native thing, you were coaching the Iroquois team in 2015, and what's your thoughts on all this nonsense of the Iroquois team not being allowed into the World Championships and Ireland having to give up their spot to get that team in?
Well, number one, yell at Ireland. Thank you. But I mean, honestly, I don't see how the USA is going to allow us to say we're a country. And it's already been proven that other countries have backed USA when we weren't allowed to go to England. England wouldn't recognize our passports and stuff like that. So that's going to be tall order for me. I can't see the U.S. saying we have free nations inside of our borders. So for me, that's number one hurdle, and I think the biggest thing we need to do is come together as not just Iroquois, but everybody. Like
Mhm.
right now, we can only get Iroquois players. Well, we should be able to use any First Nations people, and then we would be a First Nations and not Mohawk, Seneca, Tuscarora, and all these divides between us. They're not going to recognize 400 nations in their own country. So we need to come together as a community. We need to put pressure on the UN and the United States to recognize us as a sovereign nation, and then we can move forward with that. So we got a lot of work to do before we can even talk about getting into the Olympics and stuff like that, because the U.S. has just too much power, and they really don't recognize us.
That seems to be a really tough question and a tough thing to take care of. But we're living in a time where, in Canada here, our native, our native Canadians or our natives in Canada, I guess, we're trying really hard. I know they have my support, and I believe they have Gary's support. You have our support in regards to finding some form of independence, and I think it's about celebrating your culture, your history. And if you're not accepted in lacrosse, I just can't imagine anything else that Native Americans, when I say Native Americans, I mean Native Americans in America. I don't just mean in the US. I mean Native Americans, people on the American continent that are Native. They have a culture that they deserve to share with other people and to be respected for that. Hopefully, with the changes that are going on, because as we talked earlier, where there have been a lot of reasons for people to say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize it was like that for Native Canadians, Native Americans." Maybe part of excuse me, I getting choked up just thinking about it. Part of the apology should be your freedom. Your freedom to live your life the way you wish to live. And if Native Canadians, Native Americans, Native whatever, the Indigenous people that were here, which means the people that were here first, if they don't get a chance to celebrate their culture and get the respect from the rest of the world, starting with Canada, the United States, and anywhere else where you find them, because we have the same issue in Australia as well. The world is full of places where Indigenous people have been, I don't want to get into heavy politics here and name calling and horrible things. I'm just trying to think of it from a positive perspective, and that is to be able to have the respect and the understanding that you want to celebrate who you are too, which is essentially why, I guess, what I'm hearing anyway, is why it bothers you that you couldn't enter as a nation and enter with all the different bands that are out there.
I mean, for me, I love lacrosse. Like, lacrosse has given me way more than I can ever give back to lacrosse, and to represent my community, that would be very special. But I also think there are a lot bigger pictures. Like, where's the fresh water coming from? We don't have, on my reservation, it's still well water, and there was an accident, and all of a sudden half the people didn't have well water because it was contaminated. So now what are they supposed to do? Now we have people delivering water to the houses. Like, just like, what is going on? Everywhere around us has water, but we don't. And like, we have bigger issues as nations to take care of, and like, one of them is, the alcoholism, the drug use, and all that stuff. That comes from within. That's not forced on anybody. That comes from within, and we need to heal those people first. You heal the people on the community, and all of a sudden the community's healed. But it starts with one. We just had something happen on my reservation where they raided a house and they burned a house down, and I can't agree with that. Yes, the people living there weren't living the way you should live, and I'm not going to get into what they were doing or anything like that. But I also think it's pretty harsh to burn somebody's house down without offering them help first, without going to them and saying, what is wrong with, what do you think is wrong with you that you need to fill this void with this type of stuff? The USA has been the war on drugs since 1980. How are they doing with that? Because they're not going to the symptoms, right? They need to go to the source. The source is why the person is doing it, right? Alcohol is not the problem. Why you're drinking alcohol is the problem. The oxycodone, that's not the problem. The reason you're doing it is the problem. So when we get to those kind of problems and start fixing those, then the big healing can begin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're getting close to that, but the people in charge, especially in the United States, they don't really care as long as there's a dollar attached to it. They'll sell their souls and they'll sell us right down the river with them.
There's also been, and please don't get upset with me when I say this, but there's also been the problem where some money that has been given to reservations hasn't trickled down to everybody. There's also this checks and balance thing that needs to happen too, where the money that's earmarked to help Native Canadians and Americans gets to them. That's another issue. Now, that's not me throwing I'm not trying to throw an elbow. I'm just trying to say, I'm just trying to make a call, and I hope that doesn't offend anybody. But the reality is, mutual respect is something that, if I can use this term, that white people understand. They understand what mutual respect is. All they have to do is act on it. And that's really what we're talking about here. So when we talk about mutual respect, what you're saying, what I'm hearing from you is that if someone's an alcoholic, we need to find out why they're an alcoholic. And then when we find out why they're an alcoholic, we try to help them work through it instead of judge them. And all the other stuff, right? So you have friends here. Gary and I have compassion and understanding and sympathy and a willingness to understand Native Canadians and Americans because they're central to our game. That's why, part of the reason why you're here, So I wish Gary and I could change people's minds, but unfortunately, we can only do it one mind at a time, right? You know what I mean, Darius? It's really hard. People are hard. People don't want to hear about other people's problems. That's just the way human nature is, right? So what happens is other people's problems get put in the back burner. So the best thing I can do, and I don't speak for Gary and I don't even speak for you, I just speak for myself, is to educate myself. And when educated, help share that education.
That's it. Knowledge.
Yeah,
knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is taught. Wisdom comes from within.
I've been trying to put it out through Indigenous Month of just different reports daily, just of little video clips of things from different tribes, from different areas, just to try and get that message out, because I think knowledge is power. And most of it is just ignorance. People don't know. They don't take any time to try and figure it out. It's not right in front of them. So, but with just a little bit, if everybody learned just to be a little bit more cohesive and work together, I think we could do a whole lot.
And knowledge creates understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Understanding. And, when you really think about it, every war, every fight, everything that the arguments, everything comes from right and wrong. I think you're wrong. I think I'm right. So I want to fight you about it. So you know what? When did it become right or wrong is a line separator. Because when I quit listening to your point of view, then I have no understanding of where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying I'm right or I'm wrong, this is my opinion. What's your opinion? And maybe you change my mind. But that's when you have an open mind. But, there's so many addictions in the world. And one of the biggest ones is blame, complain, and excuse. You blame someone for your actions, you complain about your actions, or you excuse your actions. When you can get over that and take responsibility for your life, then you can start helping other people. But so many people don't take true responsibility for their life. And it's sad to watch because, my wife is mad at me or I'm mad at my wife. There's, now you're giving power to the other things. Be powerful yourself. If you did something, I did it because I wanted to, because that's all anybody does is what they want.
Yeah, the biggest problem is that we don't look at each other. I mean, this is you hear this all the time. I hope it doesn't sound like tripe to people, but it's about finding out what makes us the same. Why are we so busy trying to figure out how we're different when we could figure out how we are the same?
Yeah.
That's
the truth, man.
That's a great point. Just to kind of bring us back.
Let's talk about lacrosse.
A little bit of lacrosse.
Let's go. What do you think, Darius? We'll talk about lacrosse.
You know what? Just listening to Darius go here, and now you understand why he was such a good coach, why he was such a good leader in the dressing room as a player, and the accolades, with the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame, the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, the NLL Hall of Fame, being part of the Six Nations Chiefs induction into the Hall of Fame. This goes without saying. It's really a no-brainer why he's there. Just listening to his mindset on this. And again, it comes down to character. You know, a lot of what I think is missing from the league now is too bland. The character guys, the guys like when you were playing, when Richie was playing, when Travis was, those characters are long gone. We have a lot of the same cookie cutter idea of things. Like that to me is really what's missing. I'll bring up one story and you can go with it. Is you were coaching a playoff game in Toronto, and all your boys came out with mohawks. Darius disappears from the bench, and 10 minutes later, we have a coach with a mohawk. That's a player's coach.
Yeah, they when they came out with that, I was like, no way, no way. And then everybody did. Everybody did. I'm like, all right, man, I'm not going to be that guy. And then all of a sudden, all the coaches had it done, and but that's what I mean. Like we were that tight of a team, man. And that was a team that had like 14 natives on it, and it was sort of funny because the white guys were the minority then.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And the natives come walking in, and they're having all their native talks and stuff like that, like scone and just words that white people usually don't use, and you can see them sort of like, I don't know what he said there, but I hope it's not about me, But it's funny to see how, like Nate. I'll give you a great story. I was in Colorado, and they close. They don't sell beer after like 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So me, Dwayne Jacobs, and a couple other guys, three white guys, we're gonna go grab some beer out of this bar, and we get in there, and it's a complete Mexican bar, completely Mexican. Don't even speak English, most of them, right? We walk in there, and me and Dewey walk up to the bar, and I turn around and look, and the three white guys have their back up against the wall, and they look really uncomfortable. Me and Dewey are sitting there, and he's sort of laughing. He goes, "Man, I think I just seen Cam Bombery walk by." Because, natives and Mexicans sort of, have some traits that look alike,
Mm-hmm.
Me and Dewey are laughing. We couldn't get any beer. We go back to the hotel, go to bed, get up in the morning. I come downstairs for breakfast, and guys are sitting there. And I said, "Hey, how you guys doing?" "Oh, great bar you took us to last night." And I said, "Look, boys, I'm going to tell you something here, and I hope you don't take it the wrong way, but that was the most racist thing I've ever seen in my life." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Look, I don't really have to deal with this because I don't look that native. But what about Dewey? What about Cammy? What about all the natives that look native? They go into stores and bars every day, and they're outnumbered 100-1. I don't see them put their back against the wall. I don't see them living in fear. Like, and that's what you guys are doing. You're living in fear, and you're living in this, oh, these guys are going to get me because I'm white. You're not that special, bud. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Don't be a dick. You don't get treated like a dick, But I just thought that was funny to me because the one guy was like, "Man, I never thought of it like that."
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, now you do, But that's that little touch one mind, and then his mind touches two others, and their mind touches two others, and it grows.
Right. Perspective is that, yeah. Now, with you out of coaching way back when we still had AllStar games in the league, you became coach of the year in 2003. You coached them in the All-Stars in 2004. Do you think we need that back in the game now? Do you think that would help?
Right now we just need games. We need to get playing again. But that was always, I thought, a special thing. I liked it. I thought it brought players together. And I think it was a treat for the fans. So yeah, I would think we should bring that back, and I think guys need to get that kind of recognition. It's always good to know, like, hey man, I made the first team All-Star or stuff like that. But that's if you care about lacrosse, and that's something you shoot for.
Yeah, because it's a celebrate. All-Star games aren't really about the game. They're about celebrating the game and the players. It's not really, the game is almost like an afterthought. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. I know when I played in one of them, it was U.S. against Canada, and it was.
Oh boy.
Even that wasn't like, oh, let's go rough them up or this or that. It was like, hey man, let's go on it. Let's make it a 2-on show. Let's make it about skill. And it was very enjoyable, and I got to meet some guys that I became friends with, and we still talk today. So I think it brings the league together. I think it brings the fans together, and I think it's a tremendous selling of the game. Like you watch that game, and you really see how talented guys are.
I just want to remind everybody who's just joined us, we're talking to Darius Kilgore, former Buffalo Bandit, coach, player. They've also retired the number that you wore. Tell us a little bit about that and what that felt like.
Tremendous honor. It really blew me away. I didn't expect it. It hadn't really spoken to me about it, but I know when they first did it, they didn't put it up in the rafters. They put it on the turf. So there's this big number 43 out at center,
Oh, wow.
and I remember Kurt Silcott. He's like, "Oh man, what do you think? What do you think?" And I said, "Well, you're never going to see anybody spit more in one spot than that one right there, man. Like, everybody's going to want to have their feet on it. And, like, a couple of my buddies that I used to play against, they'd be looking at me on the bench and stepping all over my number, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So maybe that wasn't the greatest idea, but that's an honor that you can't beat that. Can't beat that. And when I left Buffalo, I was very hurt, and I was living in a lot of hate at the time, and I told him, take it down, but I didn't really mean that. And I love Buffalo. I love Bandits. I might not agree with some guys in the management and stuff, but that's it. That's life. You don't agree with everybody, and just because I don't agree with one guy doesn't mean I'm not a Bandit fan. I'll always be a Bandit fan, and I'll always be there for the Bandit supporters.
Was it a problem for you to leave the passion that you had on the field of play, meaning, of course, the floor, um, and then living life? Was it difficult, that transition from the game and then to being home type thing for you?
The hard thing for me was I had to retire when I was 28. Um, and I lost my mom right around that time, a little before that. So I lost my mom, then I lost the game I love, and coaching became a tremendous outlet for me. And I took it very, very seriously, like the preparation and everything like that. So I mean, for me, it was, without lacrosse, I don't know where I would have been in life. I've always had lacrosse part of my life, and it's still part of my life. And it'll continue to be part of my life until I'm not part of this life anymore. And at one time, before I retired, I remember I had this talk with my father, and I knew I was about to retire, and he's trying to figure out ways, like, maybe surgery, maybe this, and I'm just like, Dad, like, it's time, man. I can't run, I can't keep up with these guys anymore. The hips too bad, and I had to wait 5 more years to get my hips done, but I had both hips replaced by the time I was 35. And then I got the coaching, and coaching was great. And then when I lost, the coaching, I was going through a bad time in my personal life, and then I lost the coaching thing, and that was another big punch to the gut. Almost the same as when my mom died and I had to retire, and I just didn't handle it very well. Um, and I felt a
What
lot of
advice
depression.
could you give to people? Because, Darius, I'm not here to make you feel guilty about your past.
Yeah,
I'm here to help you to help other people. So, what did you learn, and what can you share with people? Because we're all sinners here.
yeah,
The first people that say they're not, we know they're the biggest sinners. So,
Biggest one.
so, so
right.
let's keep that in perspective. What did you learn, and what lesson can you pass to someone else in regards to how you dealt with those tough times, which we all have at some point in our lives, been assaulted by, if you will, been attacked by.
Well, the biggest thing I learned was you choose the life you live. If you don't like where you're at, then choose to do something else. Don't blame, complain, and excuse your life. Choose your life.
Mhm.
And that it's a subtle difference, man, but when you live it's a huge difference. And I was lucky enough to meet a person in my life, Cyril Printup, who he's not a true traditionalist, but he has a lot of knowledge on life, and he helped me a lot with how I thought about life and stuff like that. I enjoy life now. I'm the happiest I've ever been, and I choose to be that. There's still stuff that happens in life where back in the day I'd be like, oh, geez, and then I could feel the blood boiling. And now it's like it's okay. Life is okay. Like that's where I'm at right now, and I hope everybody could be there because I see so many people struggling with, they're not happy with who they are and where they're at, and it's really a simple choice in your own mind to change it, choose something different, But I know how hard that is, but it sounds so easy, and when looking back on it, it's not, But if you concentrate and you want to change enough, you will.
It's not about blame, but sometimes you also have to set yourself up, like you said, it's what you do, right? What you make of your life is also who you allow into your life. Because the truth is, this is not to say other people are terrible, horrible, and bad, but there are relationships that somehow are toxic. It's just unavoidable. And identifying, when I read the story about you, and I'm not saying I understand you because that's the last thing I'm trying to say, but for the message for the people out there, sometimes you're in a toxic relationship that you don't realize you can't be a part of. And stepping away from that relationship can be the best thing that you could do in your life, because happiness is all about you within yourself, but it's also about how you feel respected. If you're not respected, it starts you on the bad road. And so take it from me, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to everyone, is you really have to be aware of your surroundings and be aware of who you are and where you are, because where you are could make a big difference too. So, don't blame yourself, try to fix yourself. That's the point I was trying to make with you. I wanted you to help because, we spend too much time not blaming ourselves, but I think a lot of times we spend a lot of time blaming ourselves. And the biggest problem is when you don't know you're blaming yourself. And that is a real challenge in itself.
Oh yeah, guilt and shame, man. Guilt and
It's
shame.
it's a killer.
People live in that life, and it's a toilet, man. It just sucks you down, and and then when you start feeling bad about yourself, then you start acting out to have people look at you the way you feel about yourself, and it's a
That's right.
vicious cycle, and you just have to break it at some point. And like you said, like an alcoholic, he gets clean, he can't go hang out with his old buddies anymore
Mhm.
because they're all drinking and they're all hanging out in bars and stuff like that. Like
Right.
you need to change, and that's a huge step for people to accept and not blame themselves and understand, like, hey, I did it, it's over and done with. That ain't gonna change, but I can change who I am right now by doing things differently in the future. Just like in the game, man. It's so funny because what this guy really did is he helped me understand how I relate life to lacrosse. I used to say this to my players all the time: don't worry about the last play, you can't change it. Worry about the next play. You can't let the last play affect the next 5 minutes. You
Absolutely.
gotta be able to wipe that off. You gotta be able to move forward. And I was saying things that I wasn't doing,
Yep.
and now I'm doing them. So a lot
With,
Gary,
with,
happening.
with
you're
all the
absolutely
expansion coming in, are we going to see Darius Kilgore back in the NLL?
You're gonna see him try very hard. I spoke to Dallas, and I spoke to Philadelphia, and I know some people in Albany. So I've been throwing my name around, trying to get it back out there. But I really didn't want to get back involved until about a year ago. Is when I finally said, you know what, man, I really do want this. I want to be back at the highest level. I was coaching at the junior B level, and I loved it. And I loved coaching the kids down in Seneca. We had a blast. But there's something about working with the best in the game and the best minds in the game. Um, you know,
Mhm.
it, it's so different when you can say something and everybody understands it and they can build onto it. And you're not the only one throwing out ideas. So, I really want to get back to the highest level of the game and expand my knowledge of the game and hopefully, help some team win a championship again.
Now, your son played junior also. He also played for St. Catharines. He
Mhm.
had a pretty decent career too, but really big shoes to fill, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, Trav, and I all had really good success there, and I told him, man, you should have never grabbed number 43. And he was like, well, they sort of made me wear it, and I'm like, well, it's gonna be hard, man. But I know, like, I try to get him to play junior B 1 year with me down in Seneca just because he was so young. And he said, no, I'm gonna play junior A. So every time he come home from a game, I asked him for like the first month, did you break your cherry yet? Did you break your cherry yet? And he finally comes home and he goes, Dad, I got a goal. And I said, that's not your cherry. I said, cherry is when you stand up and fight somebody and you show your team what you're willing to do for them. Come tell me when you fight someone, man, and I'll be impressed with that. I expect you to score goals. I expect you to do loose ball work and all that. Show me something that you're willing to do for this team that you haven't done before. And I remember the first night he come home, man, he got in a fight. I think it was against Mimico or something. And he said, "Dad, I broke my cherry." And I was like, "All right, boy, you're a man now. I can appreciate it. Tell me the story." And he told me the whole story. But it was
on that note,
moment,
we have no time left. He's Darius Kilgore. Darius, thank you for being on the program with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much, Darius. We really appreciate that. Yeah.
Gary, thanks as usual.
Thank you, Frank. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, for Darius Kilgore, Gary Groob, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Lacrosse Talk, seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Lacrosse Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you for watching. I'm Candid Frank.